How do women test you? How should you respond? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing when you're getting tested? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So let's talk about tests. First though, I want to tell you a story about the exact moment that I learned to love being tested by women. It wasn't always this way, in fact. Long ago, I was really clueless to the fact that women were even testing me at all. I didn't know that they tested men. I thought that when a woman got kind of bitchy or she got demanding or said sarcastic things, that she was like signaling to me that, they weren't interested, right? That this behavior signaled disinterest. In my naive brain, I thought that would mean, I had to up my interest level. I had to show even more interest. I had to try harder to win her over. I had to be a better guy. You would think so. But when I really started paying closer attention, here's what I started to notice. Showing more interest, coddling her, apologizing to her, only seemed to push her further away. The more she got away with, this is number two, the more she got away with, the less respect she seemed to have for me. See, the few times that I actually stood up to them, they seemed to do an almost 180-degree shift. See, a few years back, I'll tell you a quick story. I was on vacation in Mexico with this girl, Nicole, who I'd been dating for a while, but we'd only recently kind of took the relationship to that physical level, and I was extremely into this girl. And, once I finally advanced to that physical level, I was really scared, really fearful of doing anything that would ruin it. So, like a puppy dog, I would bring her breakfast in bed. When she got snippy, I would shut up and take it. When she made rude comments about some of my friends who were on vacation with us, I obediently agreed with her and took her side. And what happened is what started out as a dream week was slowly turning into a disaster. Well, outwardly, nothing at all changed, right? In our new relationship, things were still outwardly the same. I sensed that I was losing all of her respect for me. Even worse, I felt helpless to do anything about it. She had me, and worst of all, she knew it. I was so terrified of doing anything that might offend her that I was quickly just burying my chances of taking this relationship any further. I decided that the best way to try to win back some of my power was to talk a big game, right? I figured, okay, I can't do anything, so I started kind of bragging about past accomplishments, telling stories, demonstrating higher value, But by this time, the fact was talk was cheap, and it wasn't getting through to her, right? By the end of the week, I had pretty much already come mentally to the conclusion that I blew it, that this relationship was over. I sensed that she was slipping away, and I kind of basically accepted this as my fate. What was interesting is that once I accepted that the fling was probably going to end once the vacation ended, I felt weirdly liberated. The last day of our trip, the two of us got into this debate, right, about our flight home. See, what had happened was a flight had opened up that would allow us to take a more direct flight back to the U.S. from Mexico, right? Our initial flight had a stopover, a long wait. But the problem was that only two people could take the flight. This meant that I would be separated from my friends, that they'd have to take the shitty flight. I'd get to take the good flight home while they were sitting in another airport for 5 hours for the layover. Since I had basically resolved to losing her, I figured I'd rather fly home with my friends, right? I'm not going to risk upsetting my friends for a girl that I was about to lose anyway. Here's the interesting part, though. I told my girl I prefer we fly home with my friends on the longer flight. Which, of course, right, this sets her off into a bitchy and sarcastic mood. And the entire ride to the airport, she's just silent, right? She'd barely look at me, just kind of in this edgy mood. When we get to the airport, she's walking faster, leaving me and my friends behind and continually telling me, hurry up, in this bitchy tone. Finally, I had enough, right? I stopped dead in my tracks and I said, I came down here with my friends. We came here with them. I'm not going to leave them. In fact, the truth is, I don't want to leave them. If you do, fine. Go home by yourself. I'm fine with that. At that point, I had, I turned, right? And I left and I walked back towards my friends. And she walks ahead by herself. But, what happens is, I walk behind her for a while, waiting for my friends to catch up. And what I notice is She begins walking slower and slower. Finally, she stopped and was waiting for me. When I caught up to her, there was just something completely different. She had this different look in her eyes, right? It was just so strange. She began talking to me the way she had been earlier in the week before she turned cold and distant. She tried to put her arm around me and kind of get me to forgive her. But knowing what I saw, instead I kind of turned my head and silently kept walking. I'm like, I'm going to play this out a little bit longer. By the time we got on the plane, she was nearly in tears. She was all over me. The more I pushed her away, the more she came on to me. With one small interaction, I had completely reprogrammed and changed the entire balance of power in our relationship. It was at that point I saw the full power of correctly handling women's tests. I am now a firm believer that if she can recognize, and if you can recognize the different tests that women give you, you can actually use them to increase attraction towards you. Where I used to believe that if a woman was bitchy or sarcastic, she wasn't interested, I now believe that when a girl is super nice, chances are she's kind of getting indifferent towards you, right? This is especially true early in an interaction with a woman. You gotta pay attention to this. When she starts saying things like you're a jerk or you're a player, she's testing you. She's testing you to see how you handle yourself. How do you handle yourself under this sort of confrontation? Will you fly off the handle in anger? Will you bow down to her, right? Will you bow down to her? Will you resort to lying? Will you put your tail between your legs and leave? Women are going to do things to see if you are congruent, right? How congruent you are. If you're presenting yourself as a cool guy, they want to see, is he really that way? They're going to try to shut down your game. They don't want to be open to your escalation if they know that you may not be worth it, right? They want to make you work for it. Now, I hope this encourages you to look forward to tests instead of fearing them. In one of my other videos, I explain a little formula for always passing shit tests. You can find it on my channel. But there's something even more important that I want to tell you about, and that's your mindset.